By definition, the American government's job is to protect the government of the United States, not the people of the United States. Government employees, by and large, are not your sharpest, smartest, most motivated, most dedicated employee.
Help. What do we do?
We need a hard reset. Factory reset the settings to get back to something that we can control.
Do you mean rewrite the Constitution?
Every person sitting in every seat that makes a decision that's supposed to be a representation of the American people, every person, every seat needs to be reset.
How not safe are we?
We are always 60 to 90 days away from our next tragedy.
Oh.
Always. We just don't know what that's going to be.
Does the intelligence community ever fabricate threats to influence elections in the way that Tulsi Gabbard is saying has happened with the Russia collusion narrative?
Intelligence agencies not only have to manipulate the American public to prevent them from knowing the true significance of a threat that might be imminent, but they also have to manipulate the American public because manipulating the American public also manipulates foreign intelligence. If you tell something to an American publicly, you're telling it to every English speaker in the world. And that goes both ways. So if you omit a fact, then you're omitting the fact from foreign databases. Or if you tell an intentional falsehood, you're giving misinformation to foreign adversaries as well, right? That's the information warfare landscape that we live in, that we so often forget we live in.
Right. Okay, so we're being spun essentially at all times, and we have to be, according to what you're saying. So are they worried that we're going to panic if there's an imminent threat? Why spin us?
Because so mass psychosis is very real. What will happen in any given group is you'll have the majority of the group will simply react emotionally. Fear, sadness, outrage. They'll have an emotional response to an input, but they won't land on a decision. They won't land on an action step. A small subset of the group will land on an action set as well as an emotional set. But it's very difficult to predict what action the mass will not only adopt, but then pursue. So could it be peaceful protests in a park that they land on? Or could it be violent protests in the streets burning down businesses? The same input can yield both outcomes, but you don't really know which one it's going to be because it kind of boils down to the few people who have an action that they take and then the response of the masses to that action. Do they support or do they work against that action? And we've seen it in history time upon time upon time. Sometimes protests break out and businesses burn. Other time protests break out and nothing burns down. We've seen people self-police. We've seen people hold each other back. We've seen people push each other forward into arms of troops or into lines of fire. Like we've seen incredible things. Human beings are, for all their pros and cons, without a doubt, human beings are unpredictable.
What Tulsi Gabbard is putting forward is that this was a coup. So extremely high stakes. So it does seem like the sense that it was fabricated is going to be important. So fabricated does not feel accurate, or it just feels semantically off?
So it is semantics with a heavy dose of accuracy, I would say. Fabrication by definition among intelligence agencies means that it is invented truth. There is no foundation in it. If you think about it, you've basically got three types of information. Misinformation, which is mistaken or inaccurate information. Disinformation, which is intentionally falsified information. But then you also have a third category called malinformation or malicious information. Malinformation is real fact maliciously presented so that it can shape people's opinions. With the collusion accusations, what she's basically saying to a professional intelligence listener is that what was presented by the Biden administration was maliciously derived. Instead of taking the full body of evidence, they took a subcategory of that body of evidence, reached an analytical conclusion, and presented it to the American people in a way that painted Russian activity in the 2016 election at the worst. So what she's doing is essentially picking a different subcategory of the same base of information and then presenting it forward, also, some would accuse, in a malicious intent, to spin a positive story about Donald Trump. The truth is, in that body of evidence, you're going to have lots and lots of information. So a true analytical product should look at all information and create a probability index, as well as a veracity index, meaning what's the value of each piece of information. So you may only have one or two pieces of highly valuable information, meaning very high accuracy, very high level of truth. And those two pieces of information might be better than 50 pieces of conjecture. We don't know. No one is talking about that in the media. No one's saying whether or not the report she's pulling from XYZ is high fidelity or low fidelity, or whether the original analysis that was reached by CIA in 2018 was high fidelity or low fidelity. It's mixed. There's a muted element to the value of the information. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI is a presidential appointed position. And
why does that matter?
Because she's there to serve the president, as is Radcliffe, the head of CIA, as is the entire CIA. They all serve under the executive branch. So they have one customer, and that one customer is the president. So what the president wants, the president gets.
In this landscape, how should we contextualize the fact that these are presidential appointees who theoretically serve at the pleasure of the president, though this accusation is very specifically that, you had one thing happen, which was a bleed over from Obama to Trump was actually used to undermine the president.
The thing we need to understand is that what we're seeing now isn't new. What we're seeing now has extended all the way back to 2003 with the creation of the DNI, and then even before that with all positions that were political appointee positions. The difference is that social media and the 24-hour news cycle and the modern era of contributory 24-hour news cycles and conjecture news cycles and pundits all over the place, information is more available than it's ever been. The fact that the president appoints people into positions of power that will benefit the president's ambitions and outcomes and goals, that's always been the case. That's always been the case as long as we've had presidential appointees. We just see it more now than we ever saw it before. It used to take us 2 years, 3 years before we realized, oh shit, that person's just there to put their stamp of approval on anything the president says. It used to take us years to see that. We see that now in weeks or days or before it even starts. That said, what Donald Trump has done a questionable job of is that he's put people into office in his most current administration that are clearly not qualified for the job, that are clearly there because they had some sort of pre-existing relationship with the president before he was the current president. That's something that, at least in the past, presidents have tried to obfuscate a little bit. They tried to pick someone who was a career diplomat, or they tried to pick someone who was in some sort of career category that was overlapping with the office that they sit in, right? But you're from RFK Jr. to Hegseth, each of their positions, everybody on both sides of the aisle look at that and say, this person doesn't have the quality. There's no way this person is the most qualified person in the country to sit in that role.
Should we be uniquely skeptical, maybe a better word? Should we be uniquely skeptical of Trump's appointees?
Yes, because when you look at recent history, the last time we saw essentially cronies that were not qualified for their position being put into the office that they were put into was Venezuela under Chavez. I'm not comparing Donald Trump to Chavez. I'm not saying we're destined for the same future as Venezuela, but I am saying we took a big step, a very big step, from the Biden, Kamala, whatever that disaster was, to where we are now, in the fact that we've basically abandoned previous protocols for how we identify presidential appointees and moved into this era of pushing our appointees through nominations because we controlled the Congress.
All right, you were in CIA for 7 years, but you interacted with 5 different directors, which by the math is slightly unusual. So normally the tenure of a director is 3 years. This is looking at history since, I think, 1947 when the CIA was founded. You were dealing with either 1.4 or 1.8. I forget what the exact math was. It was about half of what a normal tenure is. And you, by the way, for anybody listening, you were gone a year before this whole scandal started taking place, for anybody who cares about that. But when you look at that, what was the protocol being used that created such a high turnover? Because I don't look at that and go, oh, we had a good system before and now we have something broken, though you are helping me understand this in a different light. But what was the methodology that was being used, whether it was by Biden, Trump 1, Obama? Like, how did they select?
The office of the director of CIA, I would categorize during my tenure at CIA, that office was being used as a place to check a box on an upward swing to other political utility. So part of the reason that we had so many directors in such a short period of time is because when I first joined, Director Hayden, who was a 4-star Air Force general, was the director of CIA. That is blatantly against the rules at the time. You're not supposed to be a uniformed military officer and also be in charge of a civilian government intelligence agency. But they had a carve out, they made an exception for General Hayden. So we were already kind of breaking the rules to put Hayden in place.
And who was president at that time? Bush?
Yes, it was Bush at that time. So, and Hayden had been there, and Hayden had been very successful by all accounts. And Hayden was well liked at CIA. So Hayden was well liked, and Hayden was replaced by Panetta. Panetta was purely political, right? Leon Panetta. After Leon Panetta left, he was replaced by Petraeus as a civilian. General Petraeus, who had led military forces in the Middle East, came on as a civilian.
So once again, we have a weird thing, or because he had exited the military, no beef?
It was no beef by policy, but it was still kind of unique that he was a career military general who then came in to lead the intelligence
Why do we
services.
look at that sideways? Why is that? Why should that be weird? It doesn't hit me as weird, only because I haven't thought about it.
Because you have civilian agencies for a reason. And then you have military groups, military organizations for a reason. The culture is totally different. The mindset is supposed to be different. The purpose is supposed to be different. When it comes to the military, they're there to follow orders without objection.
So when you see a military guy in a civilian organization, you should be paranoid that they're just following orders once again, that it's just so baked into their DNA that good luck avoiding it.
And why do you put a military person in charge of an organization? For the same reason, right? And then you should also, as a leader, understand that when you put a military voice in charge of a civilian organization, you're going to have a break between the organization and the leader, because that leader is not used to leading civilians. That leader is not used to the kind of motivational talents, the kind of holistic leadership that's needed to lead people who voluntarily serve.
You can't just tell them what to do.
Because you can't just, and
You've got to bring them along.
There's no professional implication or no professional ramifications if they don't do what you tell them to do. It's not like the military where you could go to jail, where you can go under UCMJ.
Very different, yeah.
For saying no to an order, right?
Yeah.
And then the whole thing, there's this weird kind of back and forth with Mike Morrell, who's a career CIA officer who was a sitting director before he was pulled out of the sitting director seat to then become a full director.
So
by
what's
the end.
starting to break down? Like, I remember when Trump came into office and people were like, he doesn't trust the intelligence community, and he's now starting to use Peter Thiel's company, which I'm Palantir.
Yep.
And people were like, this is so weird. It sounds like something started breaking down much earlier. There's so much division between the left and the right that the agencies are starting to be weaponized against the other party to either keep them out of office. Like, is that what we see starting to happen? So these guys have an intuitive, like, give me a general, give me somebody that just follows orders, I'm gonna tell them what to do and they're gonna do it?
I don't think it's the weaponization of the intelligence services. It wasn't then. It may be going in that direction now for different reasons. But what I would say happened is that prior to the second term of Bush, the person in charge of CIA, the people put in charge of intelligence agencies, were there to serve the mission first. And that was
The
it.
mission, protect America.
Protect America, maximize intelligence collection, serve at the behest of the president to serve the
Do they
American people.
maximize intelligence collection for any reason other than to protect Americans?
No, they shouldn't have. They may have only if it was a presidential directive. And there's a whole carve out in the intelligence world for when the president finds something that matters to them. It's called a presidential finding. That finding can literally be given to CIA, and there's a blank check to pursue whatever the president's pet project is, usually with covert action. So there's a process for serving the president's pet projects, but generally speaking, by and large, you put someone in charge of an agency so that you can fire and forget that they're there, and they just keep the engine running like a CEO. What happened in the latter half of Bush and all the way through the years of Mike Morrell, which is 10 years of history, CIA became a box-checking activity for people who wanted to ride the coattails of other successful politicians, especially with Obama. When Obama took office, Obama was there on the promise of changing things. 2 years into his first 4-year term, he was realizing change isn't easy. So then he just started using executive orders, and he started to force policy through a Congress that he controlled. He also was able to do that in the intelligence services.
Okay, so I want to restate what I think you're saying so you can either correct where I'm at or we'll just have it on the table. When you say that they're riding the coattails of a politician, it's really a loyalty play. It's like, hey, you want to keep going in this world. Right. So do me a favor, jump into intelligence, run the CIA, and then there's going to be rewards for you after that. And that's good for me as the president because now I know that the person doing the intelligence work for me, I can just say, go do this thing and they're going to do it.
But the loyalty was more to a party than to a person.
That makes sense.
So hey, the Democratic Party has your back. Hey, the Republican Party has your back. All you do is you take this role, serve in it for 18 months to 2 years. It's going to look great on your resume. It's going to be perfect when you run for president 8 years down the road, 12 years down the road, 16 years down the road. So it was a box checking activity. This is very common in the military. When you know you're trying to build a future 2-star general, you start building them when they're a lieutenant colonel. Right? You start making sure they have the right items on their agenda, they sit in the right offices for the right period of time, and you move them up as quickly as possible. We have a term in the Air Force, it's called somebody on afterburners, right? The Navy has their own term, the Marine Corps has their own term. Doing the same thing in the intelligence sector. It's going to be much easier for the American public to vote for you when you're running for president if on your resume it says you were director of CIA. Look at George H.W. Bush, right? So that's what we were seeing. That's what happened. That's why Panetta took the job. That's why Petraeus took the job. Mike Morrell was the first one to not really have that kind of political ambition. He had an opportunity to do something that was totally different, but it was still politically party-oriented. What we're seeing now is a change to more individual loyalty rather than party loyalty. And a big part of that is because the Republican Party, let's not forget, did not support Donald Trump during his original run for president.
Given that we spent however many years building up a pipeline that was loyal to a party, it does feel like the scene is set for a party to go, okay, this guy's an outsider, everybody hates him, because for people forgetting, this is not Trump 2.0, this is what happened when Trump 1.0 got elected. It seems like the table is set for, cool, let's take him down. Let's use the tools that we have at our disposal to make sure that an outsider does not come in and disrupt what, at least from the left and the right, we can both agree on, which is that you need party loyal people. And so they're playing the same game. Trump comes along, he's playing a new game. Let's take him out. From a narrative perspective, it's very easy to swallow, but I'm also paranoid about facile narratives. So do you think that's what we're going to see play out in these indictments? Or will indictments ever come? Grand jury, I think, is active now. Or is this all just more spin on the behalf of Tulsi Gabbard?
I don't think we're going to see backlash. I don't think we're going to see anything get moved through the court system, especially not anything fast, going back to previous presidents. What I do think we're seeing
because there's nothing there, or because the whole system the whole
system is not built for this. We don't have
this.
So we don't. First of all, we don't have an official judicial system, or we don't have an efficient.
You mean within? Oh, okay.
We don't have an efficient.
I was like, we don't have an official judicial system. What?
We don't have an efficient judicial system. And then part of the reason that we don't have an efficient system in any of our 3 branches of government is because our forefathers wanted us to move slowly, because they wanted to build. Arguably, they wanted to build in space for people to pop off, have emotional changes in the geopolitical landscape that wouldn't radically transform our country. So they wanted to build in that buffer space. The second thing is that we have to understand that Donald Trump and the Donald Trump administration, the reason they are consistently one step ahead of the traditional bureaucracy of government is because he moves at the speed of business. He understands how to move at the speed of economy. He understands how people think and how to market to the way that people think. So whereas narratives used to be created, no shit, narratives from government used to be created by the interns who worked for Congress people who would sit around in a big room with a coach at the front, and they would all shape their narrative, and then they would give those narratives to their congressmen, and their congressman would take that narrative to the floor.
Bro, that's wild.
It's ridiculous. And anybody who's ever worked on the Hill in any kind of like civilian capacity has literally watched. They're supposed to have a meeting with the senator or the congressman from Idaho, and instead they have a meeting with 4 24-year-olds who are 2 of which are interns, 2 of which are staffers, And they're talking to these 26-year-olds, 24-year-olds about whatever policy agenda is going to get passed. And then those 4 kids are basically like, we got you, dude. And then they go talk to the congressman of Idaho, and then boom, it's done. That's the way our government works.
Wow.
It's a
the
shame.
part that freaks me out is not the youth. What freaks me out is that you've got a group of people basically saying, this is how we want people to think about it, put it together, come up with the words, the angle, all of that. And then now we're going to feed it through the system by going and sitting down with these congresspeople, especially now in the age where you hear the media and they'll repeat the same phrase over and over and over like a mindless drone. It is way unnerving. So hearing that, which I was not aware of in terms of how the message was shaped, that's not fun.
That's not fun. And that's been how it's been for a long time. So by the time you and I hear something official from the federal government, it's been shaped for weeks, if not months, by coaches, congressional staffers, and Congress people who agree or disagree or further tune whatever comes out of their staffers' recommendations. Mm-hmm. Now we move at the speed of marketing. So now Donald Trump says something and it's out there. And his staff has to react to what he said on Twitter or what he said on X, right? It's
truth. How dare you? His stock just dropped.
So there's all this different pacing that's very, very difficult. What does that mean? The reason it's so unnerving to me is because it's more difficult than ever before for Americans to know what is really happening. Mm-hmm. What is somebody actually saying? Are they actually saying what they intend to do? Are they saying something that they've been forced to say? Or are they just trying to save their job? We don't know. It's insane. And it's very, very difficult for any of us to make confident decisions in that landscape. And that is going to be the landscape for many, many years, I would argue for a decade or more, because the precedent has been set. Mm-hmm. The precedent has been set, and it is in favor of the president. So whoever's going to come next and beat Donald Trump, or whoever's going to come after Donald Trump no longer can be running for office, whoever comes next is going to pull from this playbook, because this playbook works. This playbook benefits the president, benefits presidential ambition, benefits the constituent base that votes the president into office. We're not going to see it end anytime soon.
We'll be back to the show momentarily, but let's talk about why founders burn out before they ever succeed. You started a business to be great at one thing. Instead, you became mediocre at everything. Designer, copywriter, photographer, marketer, inventory manager, customer service rep. You're not an entrepreneur. You are a one-man circus. Successful founders focus on what they're great at and let experts handle the rest. And now Shopify gives you access to world-class expertise without needing to hire a team. Their AI writes compelling product descriptions and headlines, their templates create beautiful stores that convert, and their tools handle inventory management, international shipping, and returns automatically. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Stop wearing every hat and start building your empire. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/impact. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay. I want to keep drilling into the actual facts of the case here. So looking at what Tulsi Gabbard is claiming, it seems to hinge on a small handful of things. One, that they knowingly shaped the information, that Obama rejected an initial presentation that, yes, Russia was doing something, but it's really not having any impact. The next piece would be that Trump actively was colluding, that not only was Russia doing this, but Trump was in on it. The Steele dossier was used in the creation of the intel, which they then said, no, that wasn't a big part of it, since that was paid for by Hillary Clinton's team. If all of those things are true, and Obama did know about it, that it was, as you said, malicious information, that they looked at a small subset and then presented it as if this were the whole truth and nothing but the truth. They left out, obviously, the part that's come out in the Durham Annex, which is that Obama knew about it, was briefed that they were using it as a distraction against Hillary's emails. Do you think that if those things are true, it would qualify as a coup?
I don't think it would qualify as a coup. And that's because in my worldview, coups are hyper organized across multiple branches of government. Military, police, intelligence, Internal Revenue Service, like multiple branches are included when you have a successful coup. Not just a leadership coup or a soft coup. That stuff happens in the third world, sort of, only because there's such a strong man in office that once one person tips, everybody just follows suit, but not in the United States. So I would not qualify it as a coup. I will say that it seems reasonable and logical to me that Obama would have known about it, because anything that's happening in the executive branch would have been told to the chief executive. Whether or not he made a mental note of it, whether or not it was on page 200 or page 2 of his president's daily brief, I don't know. But he would have known that there was some element here of, hey, Mr. President, we're seeing Russia participate in this way in trying to shape our elections or interfere with our elections. It looks like this is what we believe they want versus this other thing, whatever else. We had the same thing going into the 2024 elections with Biden, who then turned into Kamala, and Trump again, where people were saying, hey, we see information that suggests China wants X, Russia wants Y, Iran wants this other thing, North Korea wants this third outcome. That's not unfamiliar territory to us. I think the big difference was in 2016, it became front page news. Foreign governments have always tried to participate, have always tried to interfere with our elections. They've always contributed. They've always messed with us.
And presumably we do the same.
Exactly right. That's part of the process. That's part of the game of espionage. You never know how things are going to turn out, but you know that you want things to be so chaotic that the people in the target country don't believe in their own system. The fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that we're seeing what's playing out right now in headlines is just making Russia smile all the way to the bank. Because
Russia, China,
everybody, anybody who's not a democracy is looking at the United States right now and looking at what's going across our headlines and saying that system doesn't work. There are Americans looking at us right now saying our system may not work.
Yeah,
that's the end goal. That's the whole reason that we interfere with elections at all. Not to get a certain person through the finish line, but to make everybody doubt the process.
Okay, so I'm certainly doubting the process. There's no doubt about that. If the things are true, I still don't want somebody to go to jail. I am so worried about the justice system being weaponized against political opponents that I honestly don't know what to do. I don't know what the right play is. So the horrible answer that I've come up with is do obviously the investigation. You have to find out what's true. There's no way around that. So you have to find out what's true. And then it needs to be about the dismemberment of their legacy and their ability to interface with the government moving forward. But I do not want to see, let's just say that Obama literally said, we got to take this guy down. This is crazy. So yeah, go back, find me something better, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So you get it. He's obviously not going to go make things up, but he's going to make it clear that I need a certain answer. It's I forget, I think it was Brennan that said something to the effect of, but doesn't it ring true? And it's okay, signal coming in loud and clear about where you're headed with this. So I assume it would, even if it were something like that, and it was just we caught him on tape, he's saying it, it's obvious, there's nowhere to hide. The grand jury hands down an indictment, everybody looks at it and it's just guaranteed 1,000% he did it. I still don't want him to go to jail. But every time I say that out loud, I'm oh God, because you can't have a system where people are above the law. And at the same time, you can't have a system where people weaponize it and put their opponents in jail because ascertaining the truth, of course, is always going to be exceedingly difficult. And so you're going to find yourself where the other side is close enough, jail them. And so help. What do we do?
The only thing we really have the option to do takes time. And nobody wants to hear that. There's nothing we can do today. There's no button we can press today. This is the same situation that you're seeing across Europe as well. In Portugal, in France, you saw there was another place, possibly Belgium. I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm pretty sure there were 3 locations in the last 2 years where the parliament had a no confidence vote and reset the whole political system. Every parliamentarian lost their office.
Whoa.
And had to be revoted back in. Everything was dissolved and reset again. And
how did I not know that? That's wild.
And that's happened at least three times in the last 2 years across Europe. In the United States, that's essentially what we need. We need a hard reset. We need to not just turn the computer off, but like factory reset the settings in many cases to get back to something that we can control, something that
Now,
we
when
care
you
about.
say that, do you mean rewrite the Constitution? Or do you just mean the elected officials, they need to stand for office again?
Every person sitting in every seat that makes a decision that's supposed to be a representation of the American people, every person, every seat needs to be reset. That would be my solution to how we would do this. Let's all revisit who is the 12th congressional district leader for Wichita.
What about judges?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm primarily thinking about the people who write policy, not the people who are in charge of enforcing the law.
Well,
Those people
it got
are
a
also,
little policy-y there for a minute. Until the recent
It's true.
Supreme Court decision, it really did feel like, and I mean, look, this is what the judiciary does, is they interpret policy, but it felt pretty activist-y.
I don't disagree with you, but the problem is that that's not going to happen. The problem is that in 2 years during the midterm election, we're still only going to see 30% voter turnout. And everybody knows that's what's going to happen. And that's what makes fatalists fatalist. And that's what makes optimists optimistic. And that's what drives the wheel of time forward, man. Like, things aren't going to change unless a whole hell of a lot of people start doing things that they've never done before, including researching who they vote for before they vote for that person, showing up to the polls to actually vote for the person that they choose because of things that they've researched, not things they've seen on TV and commercials, not things that their parents and parents-in-law are sharing with them around a kitchen table, but because they're voting their actual conscience, which means you have to be an informed voter to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the long and short of it. And everybody above that pay stub, the name that appears above the government pay stub, everybody whose name who's being paid by the government knows that the American voter is not going to do that. So that's why they do whatever they can to kind of preserve their job, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard or whether it's some GS5 working for the USPS.
How does this end up happening without triggering the rank and file to whistleblow, which we're starting to get in this event, but it's not like 1,000 people coming forward. So is it that you just recruit well for people that are loyal to the country? I don't know how you pull this off. Is it you just, like in the book, Shadow Sell, your new book, which by the way, amazing. And we will certainly be talking specifically about that in a minute. But you guys like really splintered off into these really small groups so that you couldn't sort of infect one another if one person got caught. How are they pulling, if something like this really did happen and we find out all these facts, how do they do it without triggering that whistleblower instinct?
So it's not conspiratorial. I don't want anyone to think that there's some massive government conspiracy. It's just not, it's not feasible, it's not probable, and in my experience, it's ludicrous to think that this many people could be in on one thing. Because even inside government, you've got people motivated by different things. So it's not conspiratorial. It's very much tied to behavior and the flaws within the system itself. Government employees, by and large, are not your sharpest, smartest, most motivated, most dedicated employee. That's not what drives them to work for the government. What drives them to work for the government is a steady paycheck, a pension, job stability, and any number of other factors in life that make those things paramount to them. So you're not looking for, they're not predisposed to making waves. They're not predisposed to innovation. They're not predisposed to disruption. They're predisposed to stability and a very set work schedule. So that's who we staff in government, by and large. The people who are innovators, who are movers and shakers, who are outliers to that community, usually end up getting the fuck out of government at the earliest possible convenience because they know that the check mark on their resume, that they came from NSA or they came from CIA or they came from IRS, is going to benefit them in whatever they do next.
So is this a go along to get along kind of thing?
So culturally, that's exactly what it is. Culturally, you get in, and then you're so happy that you got in. And now all you have to do is just sit there with your nose to the grindstone for 20 years and you're going to have a guaranteed pension. That is such a motivating factor that when you layer on top of that the culture of you don't get promoted unless people like playing with you, what we call the sandbox effect inside CIA. If you don't play nice in the sandbox, you don't get invited to the bigger sandbox. So everybody's promotion is not tied to their productivity. It's not tied to their effectiveness. It's tied to whether or not the person above them likes them. So then we start having this grandfather or rabbi effect, whereas one person promotes and has success, they bring with them their loyalists, but those loyalists are different than what we talk about in political systems. What a loyalist really is inside of government is just somebody who understands you, can kind of understand what your intent is and what your purpose is, what we call commander's intent, so that you don't have to give them express instructions every step of the way. But that's how every office in government works. It's not that the most talented rise to the top. Oftentimes what happens is the most effective people bail, and then whatever's left rises to the top. It's like the same way in the military.
Woof. If we're being manipulated by our own government, if we're dealing with all the things you just said, people that are likely to look away from something that's inconvenient to their career advancement, how do we, the American public, protect ourselves from being manipulated like that? And actually, before you answer that, can I ask an even more distressing question? Do you think we should protect ourselves, or should we go along with the narrative?
Oof. That is a red pill, blue pill matrix question right there, my friend. So if you want life to be easy, go along with the narrative. If you want life to be easy, pick your news channel, whether it's CNN or whether it's Fox News. Only watch your news channel. Worry about the shit they tell you to worry about. Take the actions they tell you to take, and then just live your 9-to-5 job. Just do it. And buy your bread and buy your Eggo waffles and, drink your favorite coffee and just go through life until the day comes that for whatever reason, healthcare doesn't cover your illness and you pass on to the next life. That's the easiest way to go. Don't try to understand the truth if you're looking for the easy life. If you're looking for the truth, understand that there is no way to get there without a whole lot of work and a whole lot of effort. If you want the truth, you have to inherently distrust your government. You have to distrust that they are there to support you, because they are not there to support you. They are there to support the government, the continuance of government. By definition, the American government's job is to protect the government of the United States, not the people of the United States. So if you sit at your table thinking, oh, my government is there for me, they're not. You may get to choose them, but their job is to protect themselves and to protect the legacy of the American institution, because that's what really writes history books, not the history of John J. Smith. So understand that they're motivated by something very different than what you're motivated by. So you have to distrust them, and you have to try to anticipate what motivates them. If you want to understand Donald Trump, all you have to do is ask yourself, what does Donald Trump want from this decision? If you can land on that, you're going to have a much higher fidelity of being able to anticipate what Donald Trump's next move is going to be, because he is very, very good at doing what serves Donald Trump. Donald Trump's campaign, Donald Trump's administration, Donald Trump's name, Donald Trump's net worth. He's very good at that. Obama was the same way. Bush was the same way. We just have more insight into Donald Trump than we ever had into Bush or Obama. So you have to distrust your federal government, and then you have to distrust the media, because the media only feel comfortable reporting what they're told by the federal government. A trained PR person who's there to save their job and there to save the federal government is telling the news media what their official statements are. Then you've got leaks and these anonymous sources. You have no idea what their motivation is. So you have to distrust what you read. That doesn't mean that everyone's lying to you. It just means you can't trust any of it. You have to take it all as raw information and then cross-reference it on your own. And I would recommend that when you cross-reference American media, you cross-reference it against the opposing political's media output and foreign media that is both left and right-leaning. So you're going to look for something like Al Jazeera. You're going to look for something like France 24. You're going to look for something foreign to cross-reference against our own news sources. So that means if you really want to know what's happening, you're reading 4 news stories about the same single thing to come up with your own conclusion on what's likely, what's probable, and what's improbable.
So give us some of for people that don't know you, which I think at this point is vanishingly small, but the whole idea of Everyday Spy is, hey, listen, guys, I was trained by the best of the best to be in espionage, and I'm telling you a lot of these tactics work in your everyday life. So give us some tradecraft of how we look at information, figure out, because you're going to have to break things down either by what's most important, what's most likely to be totally sus, and maybe you do this by the person, like, okay, what is it? What are Donald Trump's tells? I characterize Donald Trump as being a narcissistic entrepreneur who thinks of America like America Inc., whatever. Like, what's the tradecraft that we can apply here so that we can sift through this information, connect the dots, with a high degree of efficiency?
So you're exactly right. Everyday Spy, the company that I started, is a company that focuses on bringing spy education into everyday life so that people can break barriers, whatever those barriers are. For some people, it's a mindset barrier. For some people, it's a physical health barrier. For other people, it's a business barrier. But the mission of the company is to bring spy skills to the front, tradecraft to the front, that allows you to break whatever barrier you're facing. One of those barriers is information. On a large scale, if I were to start kind of from the top down, CIA looks at everything through two lenses first, a macro lens and a micro lens. In order to understand what you're seeing on the micro lens, you have to first assess it on the macro lens. We call this assessment versus assumption. If you assume something to be true, then you're not looking at it through a lens of objective fact, which is what leads to assessment. So if you're looking at the economy, the American economy, you have to assess it on a macro level before you look at it on a micro level. So you have to look at, is the economy healthy? How much is it growing or shrinking? How does it compare to last year? These are all macro assessments before you look at rare earth minerals, which is a micro assessment. Before you look at AI or you look at memory chips, right? You can't do micro. You have to look at macro first. The same thing comes to assessing a person. When you're trying to determine what is Donald Trump's agenda, what is Tulsi Gabbard's agenda, is Pete Hegseth an idiot or not, you have to look at macro first, assess the person, where do they come from, what are their highest achievements, what are their lowest lows, who are they married to, how many times have they been married, where do they live, blah, 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 what's their net worth, right? All these macro indicators before you dig into, did he actually share Houthi secrets on Signal? You've got to look at them both. What happens is we live in an era where everything is all the communication is very micro, because micro is what gives us something that we can click on and read day to day. Even when you look at a headline, you have to look at the macro part of a headline. This is a fantastic exercise for everybody because the macro part of a news story is the headline itself. When you assess a headline, you should be asking yourself, does this headline make me feel strong emotions? It is a classic.
And that's just like a trigger to know if you're being manipulated?
Bingo.
Okay, so when you talk about macro, are you saying, because this is how I think about the economy, you need to be thinking from a cause and effect perspective. Is that what you mean by macro?
Sort of. I mean, you have to look at the past, present, and future. And you have to understand that they all have a role in shaping the intent. So when you look at a headline, for example, when you look at the economy, or when you look at a headline, as one example, the headline is maybe 12 words. What is the intent of those 12 words? Almost guaranteed the intent is to get you to read the first paragraph or at least the first sentence of the article. So we already know that's part of the intention. But what's the larger intention? If you read a headline that's speculative, or if you read a headline that's alarmist, right? Fire in Pacific Palisades tied directly to Mexican cartels. Like that is a very alarmist, highly accusatory headline. The intent of that headline is not for you to read the story. It's for you to say that, to parrot that headline to 5 or 12 other people, to automatically share it on Facebook, to automatically share it on X, to get viral attention. Oftentimes when you see a headline like that and you read the first paragraph will actually contradict the headline itself.
Yeah.
But that's a trick that's used in media. And that trick is well known in espionage because it's the true difference between persuasion and influence. That is a very persuasive headline, meaning it gets you emotional and it makes you believe in it in the moment. But if you just take an extra 5 or 15 seconds, you'll stop believing in the headline because you'll read that first paragraph. Influence is the antithesis of persuasion. Persuasion, you trust something in a moment. Influence, you trust something long term. So after you've watched Fox News for 20 years, Fox News has a great deal of influence with you. So now they can shape a narrative through you because they already know that you're believing most of what they share. So even though they share some facts sometimes, they also share some conjecture other times. But they're able to influence your political outreach or your political decisions and your political perspectives because they've built that long-term trust with you. Whether it's factual or not is irrelevant if the trust is there.
We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, here is the brutal truth about scaling. Most entrepreneurs don't outright fail, they plateau. And if you're stuck right now, you know how true that is. It could be that your revenue flatlines every time you step away, or maybe you're trapped in a commodity market that's racing to the bottom, or maybe you're one of the lucky people who is navigating a very complex partner dynamic that turns every decision into a battle. These problems and a whole lot more can seem impossible until you break them all down into first principles. My partners and I used this thinking to grow Quest Nutrition by 57,000% in our first 3 years alone and scale to $1 billion exit. And now I'm teaching this framework to a select group of entrepreneurs who are ready to scale. Now, I want to be clear, this is not for everybody because I'm looking to work with serious entrepreneurs that already have an established business and a proven track record of execution. If that's you and you want to learn how to break through your biggest business bottlenecks using first principles thinking, be sure to apply now. Just go to impacttheory.com/scale or click the link in the show notes. Again, that's impacttheory.com/scale. Now back to the show.
Okay. The method that I use to steal my mind, and I'd be very interested to see if you see a better way to do it or if there's tradecraft language that explains what I'm doing, is I build a map of cause and effect. And so if I will, and listen, I know that the maps that I have of cause and effect are often they're wrong in some way, and I just don't know which way they're wrong yet. So I don't want people to think that I fool myself into thinking, oh, this is perfect. But when you're mapping cause and effect, you'll find that the output of the system has high predictive validity. And so it's like, okay, there's probably something wrong, but this is giving me answers that end up being true way more often than they're not true. So the economy, for instance, by building a map of the cause and effect of inflation, which is my favorite hobby horse, it's made me make investing decisions that have made me millions of dollars. So it's like, good luck convincing me I don't understand the rough swag for sure of the cause and effect of the economy. Because I have spent now years building a cause and effect sense of the economy, testing it against decisions, if somebody comes and tells me, no, it's not really that way. Mamdani runs in New York and is like, let's make grocery stores free. I'm like, hold on. This map of cause and effect that I built tells me that that's not going to work. In fact, if you do that, I'm just going to get richer because you're doing something that's going to be so inflationary. It'll be destructive to the economy. All I have to do is bet against the economy. I'm going to make more money. So it's like, okay, that's dumb because the people that you're trying to help, they're not going to be helped by that mechanistically. And so that is my protective mechanism. Now, it's extremely time consuming to build, but it's incredibly effective. Is there, for people that haven't read the book, in Shadow Cell, like you really get, dude, life and death decision making. So that's the ultimate test. So how do you begin to rapidly understand in an environment where you know some people who are trying to disguise themselves from you are lying to you intentionally to crack through your defenses, and that if they're successful, they may kill, imprison, whatever. So how are you parsing that information like at the nitty-gritty level? I got the macro, the micro, but like, what's the like real nitty gritty? We're here on the ground. You're saying a thing. I'm like, you looking at my face, my body language. Like, what are we doing?
So what you're talking about when you talk about your cause and effect map, the tradecraft term for that is called an ACH, an analysis of competing hypotheses. That's your map. And what an analysis of competing hypotheses is it's literally a list of all the hypotheses that could be determining the input that you're seeing. So the price of milk just went up. It went up because of A, it went up because of B, it went up because of C, or the value of my dollar that bought the milk went down because of A, because of C, A, B, C. So you create all these hypotheses, and then you compete the hypotheses against each other. What's probable, what's less probable, what's the evidence that I have to support this, what's the evidence that I have to support that? Is the evidence higher fidelity or lower fidelity? And then you come out with a highly probable, high fidelity hypothesis that you can then test to see whether or not your process was right or wrong. So ACH is what you're using for that process. And I love that you're doing it. I'm not surprised with somebody as intelligent as you that you've created something like that, homegrown on your own. When you're making decisions in the moment, you're doing something very similar. When you're looking at body language, when you're hearing verbal intonality, when you're considering how far behind you somebody is walking or how slowly somebody in front of you is driving, you're doing the same thing. You're creating a real-time ACH. However, you're limiting the number of factors that you're considering to compete against each other. Rather than having a fulsome list of 24 hypotheticals, you're only looking at the top 3. The top 3 is something that you can process quickly. The human brain basically breaks everything into 2s and 3s. 2s and 3s. So something is 2 until it is 3, then it's 3. Once it's 4, it's 2 sets of 2. Once it's 5, it's 1 set of 2, 1 set of 3. So the brain just naturally moves in a way, or cognates in a way that breaks things down into 2s and 3s. So if you have to choose between making 2 options or 3 options, always make 3 options. So we try to have a primary option, a positive option, a negative option, a neutral option. So I think this is happening and it benefits me, and here's my hypothesis. I think this is happening and it works against me, here's my hypothesis. I think this is happening and it's not going to affect me, but it will affect the next thing that comes. That's a neutral outcome. So whether it's somebody squinting at you, somebody high-fiving you, somebody yelling at you, you've always got to have those 3 hypotheses. Just as a quick example, you see a mother in a parking lot screaming bloody murder at her kid. Most people look at that and they're like, that's a bad mom, right? Maybe. That's one of 3 hypotheses. It could also be that that mom is stressed out and whatever's going on, she's trying to protect her kid, and that's your positive. Her stress is what's protecting the kid. And then there's always a third option. The third option is it has nothing to do with the kid. We have no idea what's happening. Maybe she's just got fired and she's just reacting to being fired, but the kid's the one taking the bullets for her reacting. We don't know. But whatever comes next is she's going to drive that car. So how does A, B, and C affect her driving of the car? Well, in all 3 cases, we know that there's going to be a stressed out driver behind the wheel. So now we can focus on that outcome, no matter what the input might be. Instead, most people would just focus on now gossiping about this woman who's yelling at her kid, completely oblivious to the fact that once you get behind your fucking wheel in the same parking lot as that fucking lady, she could run into the back of your car and now put you and your kids at risk. So ACH and that process of considering positive, negative, and neutral is a big part to how you get into the nitty-gritty of any real-time operational implication.
That's really useful. The idea of, okay, could be one of these, forcing yourself to take different framing, very smart, and this is what's going to happen next, I think is the really useful insight. Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, talks a lot about that, with how Soros made his unbelievable fortune when they broke the Bank of England. So he said, okay, everybody talks about how brilliant that was, but nobody looks at, we doubled our money the next day because before we went in and broke the back of the Bank of England, we knew we're going to get this windfall and this is what we're going to do with it. And he was like, so we made $1 billion on the first trade and then we made like another $1 billion on the second trade. And so he's like, nobody ever talks about the second trade. And he was like, the real thing is that, like, knowing that next move. I always thought that was really smart. And you're right. Most people, don't force themselves to come up with a different framing. So they have the initial reaction. The emotion makes the thing feel true, which I am desperate to get people to stop doing. Everybody trusts themselves way too much. Yeah. Emotions make dots feel like they connect that don't actually connect. So they see bad mom, they think bad mom, and that's sort of the end of it. They end up feeling superior, that feels good. And then they get smashed into by the driver because they're not paying attention. So yeah, that's really fascinating. But to pull yourself out of that is really important. Okay, so
I want to throw that out there too.
Please.
One of the reasons I like you so much is because you want people to stop thinking that way. Here's the depressing truth is 80% of the people listening to this conversation right now are not going to change the way they think.
That is overly generous. I clock it, and I'm not kidding, at 98%.
So between 80 and 98% of people hearing this conversation will not change. All that's depressing if you look at it through a lens of humanity. We had this conversation off camera. You like people, you just don't spend a lot of time with them. I actually don't like people. And I spend way too fucking much time with them.
Amazing.
Right? So
it's hilarious. Why don't you like people?
Because people are like this. Because 98% of people, if you're being accurate, 80% of people, if you're being generous, are emotionally driven, completely unpredictable. They want nothing more than just to feel the lie that they're safe day to day. And that's not how I want to spend my time. That's not how you have a deep, meaningful conversation with somebody. That's not how you find the person that you trust with your kids. That's not the person who gives you a whiskey recommendation that you actually want to drink. That's an asshole. And the world is full of assholes just trying to survive, right? Just trying to make it to the next sniff of their own asshole. And I don't have any interest in that. I'm looking for that 2% of people who are like, you know what, I'm on a trajectory to improve, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how hard the work is, no matter how difficult the path is, because if I'm a little bit better tomorrow than I am today, I have hope for the future. Not hope that I'm being sold on the end of a ballot, but hope that actually resides in my brain and my body and my fitness level, etc. So the vast majority of people are never going to change. That makes it all the more valuable to the few that do change, because you now have not just like you were saying, the first trade and the second trade, and the real money comes in the second trade. If you improve yourself today, not only do you get a little bit better today, you get a whole hell of a lot better than your competition every single day. So you've got the benefit, the growth of your point A to point B, plus the growth of your point B against everybody else's stagnation from previous days. That doubles the amount of growth and doubles the amount of opportunity and advantage that you have. That's a big lesson CIA teaches us. They tell us right out of the gates, we're going to tell you something that's published in psychology books, that's out there in business books. We're going to teach you how to do this in a systematic way. And even they know that only 2 out of the 10 people in the room are actually going to succeed at doing it in the field. And that's fine. With all of their application, with all of their hiring rigidity, they still know not everybody's going to apply it. They'll learn it and never do it.
Yeah, it's what I call the only belief that matters. If you believe that putting time and energy into something will make you better, then you'll actually put the time and energy into it. Some people just, the vast majority of people never move forward. I assume because they're paralyzed by thinking, well, I'm not good at this and I don't want to be embarrassed, and so I stop. All right, that's enough of that mindset-y bullshit. I want to get back to the lie. You've said that twice now. So the lie that you're safe. How not safe are we?
There's a saying that I learned in business from somebody that I trust. It may not be accurate, but it keeps my feet to the fire. That every company is basically 1 quarter away from not making payroll. Because any company that's longer than 1 quarter away from not making payroll isn't trying to grow fast enough. And any company that's basically 1 month away from missing payroll, is a company that's too overzealous, which basically makes it so everybody who has a job who's like, oh, I've got a job and I'm safe. Actually, you're 1 quarter away from not getting paid. Just depends on the decisions that your CEO makes. That same wisdom in business rang true for me immediately, because that's how it works in espionage. We are always 60 to 90 days away from our next tragedy. Always. We just don't know what that's going to be. There's always some terrorist group that's planning to drop a bomb. There's always some drug deal that's trying to ship 10 tons of some sort of drug. There's always some weapons dealer who's trying to smuggle a nuclear weapon across a border. Always. And it's a 60 to 90 day window between whether or not they'll be successful or not. That's how we view constant threats. So we can't just shut down. That's why during a government shutdown, your intelligence services don't shut down, right? They don't even fall back to critical needs. They fall back, everybody in the intelligence infrastructure is considered to be a critical asset, because we know 60 to 90 days is too much to lose a window into something.
No joke.
We get scared if we lose access for 7 days. If we don't get new information from a target location in 7 days, if MASINT fails, IMINT fails, OSINT fails, everything fails for 7 days, we start to really wig out, because what's happening in those 7 days? And if we're losing this gap right now, then we have to question the previous 7 days before the gap. Was it shaped information? So have we really been 14 days out of the know? So Americans feel safe because they don't realize we're only 60 to 90 days away from the next tragedy.
Have you seen A Few Good Men?
I have.
All right, there's a really phenomenal speech that makes its way on social media all the time as a meme, but it's like, you wake up and sleep under the umbrella of protection that I provide you, and I resent you asking me or criticizing the method in which that I keep you safe. So there's that side. I tend to get really gassed up every time I hear that speech, like it speaks to me. But then there's Eric Weinstein, who I respect tremendously, who's like, we have to really be concerned about what he calls the Jessipification of America, where we're all just like, yeah, go do whatever you need to do, just keep me safe. Where do you fall on that spectrum? Is this a whatever the fuck it takes, or?
I certainly fall on the you need me on that wall, you want me on that wall side of the argument, because the other side of the argument isn't really arguing the same point. There's a tool that we use in manipulation called switch tracking. And switch tracking is when you see that an argument is happening and the argument is about A, and you want the argument to be about something else because you can't win the argument about A.
Like, let's say the argument's about your emails, but you don't want it to be about your emails.
You don't want it to be about your emails. So then you have to argue about something else. So your wife is yelling at you because you're checking email at the dinner table.
I'm talking about HRC and her using a private email server.
So Hillary Rodham Clinton has a private email server, and that's what the argument is about. Well, they know they can't win that argument, so they have to make it about something else. So how do they make it about something else? Well, they talk about the lack of security around the previous email server that they were using. Well, now all of a sudden the response to that argument becomes about the other email server, not the private email server. And now you can have you can completely switch the track of an argument by talking about something different, right? Husbands and wives forget Valentine's Day all the time. So a husband forgets Valentine's Day. A wife gets angry about the husband forgetting Valentine's Day. She says, hey, you never remember Valentine's Day. Why don't you ever remember Valentine's Day? So the husband says, well, my love, I buy you something nice every year for your birthday, and you never seem to appreciate the thing I buy you for your birthday. Well, then what's the wife going to respond to? What's the last thing you bought me nice for my birthday? Well, I bought you that necklace. Well, I love that necklace. Well, I didn't know you loved that necklace. And the whole conversation about Valentine's Day is over. That is a massive tool in the manipulation world, especially with trained manipulators, advertisers, negotiators, intelligence. Because all you have to do is just put one diverting comment into an argument, and you're arguing about something altogether different. So you need me on that wall, you want me on that wall. The conversation is about, you need a wall. Well, then the other person is like, well, we can't just do whatever it takes to keep us safe. That is a switch track. That is a whole different argument, because doing whatever it takes to keep you safe is no longer about a wall. Now it can be about rockets, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, children spies. It can be about anything. Whereas you need me on that wall, you want me on that wall is about a wall.
It's very interesting. How far do we as Americans need to go to protect that wall? Like, is it, are the dangers so high that children spies, Jeffrey Epstein, if he was an intelligence asset, sex, like the craziest, most PDF file type shit, like there is no thing we shouldn't be willing to do for the greater good? Or do we draw a line somewhere?
The switch track question, I would say, is really, how much do you want to remain America's largest superpower? If you want to remain the world's largest superpower, if you want to remain the world's largest superpower, you're going to have to accept the dirt that comes with being the biggest bully on the playground. You're going to have to deal with the fact that we have some corruption. You're going to have to deal with the fact that we cheat our closest allies. You're going to have to deal with the fact that we hide and cover up things at the highest levels of leadership, because the myth of the country has to be so powerful that others fear us. General Petraeus became the director of CIA. We were talking about that earlier. Yep. I had the privilege of being one of his workout buddies. Everybody who was Petraeus' workout buddy was really just a big kicking dog, because the dude only did one workout every day, and he had been doing the same workout for 30 years. So he could kick your ass on eagle push-ups or eagle sit-ups any day of the week. It was just insane. But what was cool is you got this time with the general whenever you worked out with him. He would never work out with the same person 5 days in a row. It would be like you're his every other Monday person, somebody else is his Tuesday person, whatever else it might be. So I had this time with the general. He gave me this speech one day while he was kicking my ass in push-ups. And he was talking about how powerful the mythos was to him being an effective general in the army. And he was like, I do the same workout every day. He's like, you work out with me enough to know that this is my workout. So of course I'm better than you. But he's like, I'm not doing this for you. I'm not even doing this for me. I'm doing this for every new recruit who joins the army who finds out that their general kicks everyone's ass. That's why I do this, because that new recruit isn't going to stop to ask themselves the question, well, maybe that general just does the same 5 exercises every day. Instead, that recruit's like, fuck yeah, my general kicks everybody's ass and he's 60 years old. I could be like that. I could be the general. That's America. We kick everybody's ass. He's like, I need to motivate that person. because that person joins at a rate of 25,000 new people a year. It's like, I don't have to worry about the lieutenant colonel who knows my secret, because lieutenant colonels retire at a rate of 200 every year.
Right.
So where's the focus? The focus is on making sure the mythos motivates the masses. And that was such a powerful message to me, because I was like, holy smokes, here's a guy who lives his personal life around shaping the myth about his personal capabilities to motivate others.
So this feels like the very question that we are going to have to contend with, which is social media has killed the mythology. Everything is so in our face. You can read a book, watch a podcast, whatever, about all the behind the scenes stuff. Like there's this book by James Burnham, which I talk about endlessly, called The Machiavellians, Defenders of Freedom, which people do not pay attention to that second part, and they just hear Machiavelli and they think, all bad things all the time. And he's just saying, look, the world works a certain way. And if you're not being honest about how the world works, you're going to be constantly surprised. And so the book is about, this is how the world works. And it's really gross and it's really ugly and it's horrifying. But it's very much the reason that you will always have a group of elites is, like you said, people aren't going to show up to vote. But it's also because there are people that are, they're smart enough and they are morally gray enough that they want control of the narrative, and then they want to give you the pre-masticated narrative that for a very long time, depending on what country you're in anyway, it really was better. And just like you said, blue pill, just, hey, let me do this thing. I'm going to be just up on the wall. I'm going to make sure you're safe. And then I'm going to lie to you about what America is in this case, but everybody's going to be doing it in their own country. I'm reading endlessly about Xi Jinping in China. And bro just says, obviously in private conversations, but he's like, listen, propaganda is real. We have to be very careful about the story that we tell about China, and that China is basically mandated by heaven to rule the world. He doesn't say rule the world, but lead. And it's like, I'm like, yeah. And the big problem that we're going to have in the coming decade is if America tries to out-China China, we will lose. We are not in a place right now, because of the populist moment, to lean into freedom, certainly not as one giant collective. There is a huge contingency clamoring for all the control-y elements of, EU, I'm looking at you, baby, and China, like that whole like scan every DM, all of that stuff, which is absolute insanity. But we are going to collide with a power that is unflinchingly saying, I'm going to manipulate you top to bottom. We're going to talk about it openly in the Politburo. But within that, we're going to talk about this openly. This is what we have to do. Everybody, you got to repeat this ad nauseum. And then in America, and I think rightly so, but we're going to have to figure out how to make this work to our advantage. We're like, no, if you say some bullshit, I'm going to say that's bullshit. I'm going to call it out. We're going to talk about everything openly. We're really going to look under the hood and we're going to get to what's really going on. But the problem is elites are still a real thing, meaning there's only so many people that are intelligent enough and interested enough in pre-masticating the narrative and feeding it to people. And then the vast majority of people just want to fall in love, have some sex, eat great food, raise their kids, like make some money. And so you get into this weird dynamic that we're in right now, where we have to decide, like we have to consciously say, I know this is mythology, but I'm still going to lean into it. And if America cannot stop telling itself the moronic mythology of we're like these evil slave traders, then we're going to implode. Like whatever we do, it's going to be mythology. I am well aware of that. But we've got to wide-eyed say, I get it's mythology, and yet we're still going to decide to lean into this. Otherwise, we're going to get our asses handed to us by people that have a positive vision of who they are as a people, regardless of all of their foibles.
I often call this the adolescence of the United States. That's where we are. If anybody who's ever been through adolescence knows how uncomfortable that is. There's the belief that you're still a child and the crashing reality that you have responsibility. And the worst part about adolescence is that it's going to get worse. It doesn't get better. Adolescence, many of us would kill to go back to adolescence, to be like, oh, are you kidding me? All I do is smell bad and have pimples on my face, but somebody else still pays rent. That'd be great.
Right.
We never go back to that ever. So in the journey of the United States, we forget we're not that old. We're less than 300 years old. We are at a place right now where we're kind of in our adolescence. China's 5,000 years old plus. Russia's 3,000 years old plus. These are countries that They went through adolescence a long time ago. It's like putting a 13-year-old up against a 40-year-old. Does a 13-year-old have advantages? Yes. So does the 40-year-old, right? I remember when I was in college, we used to joke about old man strength. Being a 40-year-old guy who's got a pot belly but is somehow still strong. Yeah, he's got 40 years of body mass that he's grown. He may have a pot belly too, but he still has one good fight left in him. You know what I mean? So we have to figure that out as a country. Are we going to understand that the childhood dream, the myth of being a child forever is over, and now we have to make some big boy decisions, some big girl decisions. We have to put on our big kid pants and move forward. And by the way, it's not going to fix itself overnight. You're going to have pimples for a long time, right? We're going to have boners and sweatpants for a long time until we figure out how to deal with this. That's just the way it's going to work. I don't believe that China and Russia have done it right. I believe that they have done it for a long time. I don't think that they've done it right. Because at the end of the day, when you put a volunteer professional soldier against a conscripted, uneducated ruffian who has barely been trained, it's not an equal fight, right? And that's how the United States has always worked. We've always worked off of our warfighter killing 10 of their warfighters, our tank killing 10 of their tanks, our aircraft downing their aircraft carrier, right? That's how we've always calculated, and that's how we've been successful. It's how we were successful in the American Revolution. It's how we were successful in World War II. It's where we had success in Vietnam and Afghanistan. It's where we were able to leverage that advantage. Where we didn't have success is where we were not able to leverage that advantage. So as we look to the future, we have to be asking ourselves, what do we want as a country? Do we want to be a country that collectively stays ahead of everyone else? And then if we want to collectively, and that's a question. There are plenty of people who don't think that we should be a superpower anymore. There are people who think the world will be a better place if there are 3 or 5 or 7 countries that are all equally wealthy, equally sophisticated, equally innovative. I am not of that ilk, but there are plenty of people who are still asking themselves, do we want to be equal? And then, whether you do or don't want to be equal, how do you get there? How do you keep that? You can do it by swallowing the narrative. That's how other countries have proven that they can do it. You can also do it through revolution and through constant fighting. You just have to decide if that's how you want to do it. Do you want a revolutionary change, or do you want a more controlled, productive change that takes longer?
Yeah. The bad news is history tells you if you choose the revolutionary angle, you are going to have a strong man come to power. America is basically the only example of where a guy was like, yeah, no, I just want to retire. Yeah. So I'll do this one round as president. I know I could be king, but I'm just not interested in that. And I'm going to peace out back to my farm.
Once.
Now,
we had it one time.
Yeah, exactly. So Trump would run again if you let him. So those days feel like they're gone. Okay, so you want America to remain a superpower, at least that's what I inferred from what you were saying. Okay, so I see us as we're on a Thucydides trap collision course with China in no uncertain terms. China's aware of it. I'm reading a book called On Xi Jinping right now, and his cabinet has used the term Thucydides trap before. They understand what's happening. Xi Jinping is becoming more dismissive, literally as a policy, more dismissive of America. Because he believes that we're the declining power and that they're on the rise. It is merely a matter of time. This is me stepping inside his shoes. It's merely a matter of time before America just cannot defend its position anymore. He doesn't believe that we collectively have the will to try to maintain that position anymore. And to your point, I'm not sure that he's wrong, unfortunately. But if you had, a moment on a mic where you could make a pitch, what would that look like in the face of the reality of if we will let it, China will become the global bully, the biggest bully on the playground. They're not going to be like, let's just do this together, bro. That's not how history says this will play out. So what would be your pitch?
I would have 2 pitches. I would have the fatalist pitch and the hopeful pitch. I am of the hopeful pitch. And my hopeful pitch is China's already doing this. They already believe we're going to crack. They already believe we're going to break. They already believe that we're on the decline and that decline is not going to get righted. That's what they already believe, which means we know what they believe. But they don't know what's really going to happen. We can change it at any given time. And if we change it, they have to react to our change, which means we have the advantage in first mover advantage in business and military, everything else. So we have every opportunity and every advantage to change the trajectory that we're on. If we don't, we just do what they already say we're going to do. And that's like the most embarrassing thing in the world, is to literally walk into the trap that somebody else placed in your path and know that you're walking into that trap and do it anyways.
Yeah.
That's my hopeful pitch. My fatalist pitch is start learning Mandarin Chinese. The second most spoken language in the world is Mandarin Chinese. Not by a little bit, but by a lot. The primary difference between the group of people who speak English and the group of people who speak Mandarin is that only 25% of all people who speak English speak it as their first language. 75% of all English speakers speak it as a language they learned after their native language. Mandarin is the other way around. 75% of Mandarin speakers, it's their native language. Only 25% of speakers learned it as a second language. So you can see this, the two populations are almost the same. The big difference is how much had to learn the language to succeed versus how many were born with the language. If you want your children to succeed on the current path that the United States has, you need your children learning Mandarin Chinese.
That's wild. How do you think we should be using AI in this fight? I know. So my whole thing is AI presents significant risks, but when you look at it, game theory tells you China's going to keep developing it because it'll be the most powerful weapon that's ever been developed. It will dwarf nuclear. So it is going to be developed. And the only question is, are we going to join the arms race or are we just going to let it happen to us? But you've also got the UK government saying, and the EU, we're going to scan all your DMs. We're going to be all up in your business. So are you like, yes, that's what we need to do? Or is there some other way that we should be thinking about AI?
I've always been all for AI. I've also been all in on transparency. Even if you are cheating on your spouse, lying about your taxes, and carrying a second phone so you can talk to your girlfriend, let it all be known. Let it all be known to the government. To the government.
Got it.
Because somewhere out there, there's somebody using a second phone for something different. And somewhere out there, there's somebody using banks and monetary systems actually for nefarious purposes. And when the government sees that you're cheating on your wife and cheating on your taxes, they don't really care. They'll let you keep your $2,000 that you embezzled from your tax refund because it's not worth it to them to pursue you when there's some ultra wealthy person who's embezzling $100 million. So they're going to choose the other person, but they need to have access to everything in order to find the other person. If you choose privacy to protect your little lies, other people are using the same privacy that you're protecting to protect their big lies.
How do you reconcile that with what you said earlier, though, which is the government's not here to protect you, they're here to protect themselves. And they will weaponize that against you the second you give them a reason to. And if that reason is simply you're speaking against them and you're causing them problems, oopsie, you're having an affair, suddenly comes out, oopsie, your $2,000 thing, like, yeah, it wasn't a big deal when you weren't bothering me, but you're bothering me now. And I am going to bring the full weight of a tyrannical government down on you.
So I absolutely said the government's there to protect itself. I never said its intent is to weaponize the government. That is something that I understand people are concerned about. It is a valid concern. The trick is to maintain the balance between being transparent and never being the target. Because here's the thing, even if you are hiding your affair, even if you are hiding your tax embezzlement, if you become a target, there is no resource that people won't use to destroy their target, especially if it's the federal government or whether it's a law enforcement agency or if it's a foreign intelligence service. So whether you're transparent or not, once you become a target, you're fucked. So the goal is to never become a target. That's the number one thing you have to do. If you want to speak out, then put that target on your chest and let yourself be brave and be the martyr, and hopefully you achieve the change that you want to make. I would argue that there's more efficient ways to get what you want without making yourself a target. That's what espionage is all about. Affecting the outcome that benefits you without ever being seen in the process. I'm a huge believer in the fact that we all have that potential and that capacity. I believe it so much. I have a business that teaches people how to do that, right? Don't be the threat. Be the person that everybody overlooks, but still be as transparent as possible, because the only way that they're going to find the distraction instead of you is if they have full access to everything.
That's interesting. I hate that answer, but I'm gonna have to sit with it to see. I mean, listen, I don't have an easy answer to that one. So, yeah, okay, I'll spend time with that. But I just don't trust the government, and I assume that they're going to be as tyrannical as the day is long, and that they will go after people randomly, not randomly, but they'll go after people. Like COVID-19 was just such a wake-up call in terms of the government gets some ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
And they will go ham. And because the government is made up of real people, and there's some huge percentage of Americans that they want to, like the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, or Association, I don't know which, anyway, the DSA, they want to abolish the family. They actively say you should seek a totalitarian government, that the DSA should be in every aspect of your life. Like, it's just wild. So I'm like, this all sounds horrible. I want none of this. This is like, to use we're in our adolescence. This is like a child wielding the weapon of an adult. At least China's like, listen, we know how this game is played. You guys just won't shut the fuck up. So we are gonna have to kill a few of you, but only a few. And then it's all just with this in mind. These guys are just nut jobs who somehow think that this is all gonna work out. That was not an advertisement for China, P.S. I think they are both horrifying. Okay, so having said all that.
Well, the thing to keep in mind too is a tyrannical, I agree, we're heading down a path of a more authoritarian, more tyrannical, less justice-based government. I think that's the direction that we're going if you take the temperature today. Temperature can change tomorrow, it can change in a week, it can change at the midterms, but that's the temperature we have. We're looking like we have a fever. That's what it looks like right now, right? I need more cowbell. But we don't only have two options. Our options are not revolution or shut up and color. We also have an option to leave. We're Americans. We have one of the most powerful passports in the world. You can always leave. And one of the few arguments that I loathe more than any is when people say, oh, I can't leave. I can't leave because I have too much responsibility. I can't leave because I have too much debt. I can't leave because of whatever. I don't make enough money. I've been hearing this argument from people forever. People who don't like living in Florida but refuse to move to Georgia, whatever. If you care enough, change only happens when the pain that you feel is greater than the pain of the change itself.
Yeah.
So if you want to sit and bitch and you don't want to leave, then you don't feel enough pain yet.
Yeah. Oh, you will. Okay, I want to talk about shadow cell. I want to bring in your wife, Jihi. What is it that is the secret to being able to profile somebody well, such that you can get from them ultimately what you need?
Well, so the way it works, so targeting is the career field, and it began with the military during the War on Terror, and their targeting was more capture kill. But the CIA started utilizing it for more traditional targets, and the key is really just understanding human beings. So understanding their pattern of life, understanding their loved ones and their inner circle, understanding the things that they are interested in, where somebody else, a case officer, can connect with them on a personal level.
Okay, and when you say understand it, like, what are you looking for? So you say pattern of life. Is that like the rhythms, the things that we pursue? Like, what hooks are you looking for?
So part of it is the nuts and bolts of how do I get somebody in front of them. So when I say pattern of life, what coffee shop do they go to? What time do they leave for work every day?
So the logistics of your life.
Yes, the logistics of your life, where somebody can just casually bump into you and, comment on your earrings. I mean, obviously not your earrings, but
mine are gorgeous. What are you saying, Jihi?
I say, oh, I love your shirt. Have you been to Japan before? And shake up a conversation.
By the way, boys and girls at home, I mentioned earlier that I was into Japan. Okay, I'm being clocked. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, and then picking up. So through the various data streams that we can collect at the CIA, which are all classified, but there's a variety of information that can be collected on individuals. And using what information you have on a person, you can gather what their interests are, you can gather what their relationships are like with their family. Are they devoted to a spouse? Do they cheat on their spouse? Do they have children, but do they have a lot of children and they love them? Do they have no children, but they want children? There are these little things.
What's the way to get people to start bringing that stuff out? Do you try to remain like, no matter what this person says, are you neutral? Or is it no matter what they say, you're positive? Like, how do you ingratiate yourself into that world?
So the targeter works all behind a desk. So everything I'm looking at is data that comes in. So it's like looking at somebody's...
just building a profile.
Just building a profile. But I mean, people put so much on the internet, and then there's all these other data sources. So there's all these open sources that people are very open about their lives. And then there's all these other data sources that are proprietary and classified that give you a broader picture of a human being. And then you just start thinking about culturally, how do those things apply to that person?
How important is culture?
Culture is hugely important. Hugely important.
So I have a hypothesis that everybody can be understood based on three things: their biology, so just we are chemical processing plants,
Yes.
but also male, female, going to make a huge difference.
Yes.
Their values and their beliefs. Their values and their beliefs are, for me, basically the way of being specific about culture and how it manifests. Does that pick it all up? Is there something else?
So I 100%, Andy and I have talked about this before. I 100% agree on biology. And I think people have to be careful not to think of biology as the cultural norm that we've been taught, because biology is not, men are better at this and women are better at this. Biology is, there are functions there are chemicals that drive us to do certain things. So I definitely think that. I think the other two also, but then the other thing I would add is that as human beings, we have basic needs. So one of those is the need for connection, right? One of those is the need for security. All of us as human beings, no matter what culture you're from, we require the sensation of being connected to other human beings and feeling secure in our lives. And so those things definitely play into how can I create an approach for a case officer to bump into somebody and make that human connection with them, despite cultural differences, despite possible language barriers. And those are really the things that you have to focus on when you're thinking about, how do I bump this person and make friends?
One of the things that hasn't come up is that targeters also direct the actions of case officers in many ways.
Are targeters more frequently female?
No, but I would say they are more frequently introverted.
Interesting. Okay.
We're nerds.
To put it in a word. But they can direct, because if they've scrubbed everything, they've scrubbed classified databases, they've scrubbed social media, they've scrubbed academic databases, they've scrubbed historical records. They know everything there is to know, and that also means they know what they don't know. So then they can tell a case officer, hey, on the next meeting with that person, dig into family, dig into how they liked college, dig into favorite alcoholic drink if they drink.
Because they want a more well-rounded profile.
Because they want more in their profile. And they can direct the activity that drives the collection of intelligence, because every one of those elements is a new way into whatever secret information you're also trying to get.
Okay, so in Shadow Cell, you guys do a really good job of walking people through the journey of what it was actually like to be there on the ground, which makes it an incredible read. P.S. However, you're having to create a layer of bullshit, lies. Like, I'm assuming your name wasn't actually Alex Hernandez.
Correct.
That's a code name for what it was. Obviously, though I worked with multiple AIs to try to figure out what Falcon really was. It comes up with an answer, by the way. I don't know if it's true or not, but it has a strong hypothesis. So when you're doing all of that stuff and you're trying to build the sense of who this person is, how does that translate into something that's like really grounded? What was an example from the actual thing that you guys lived through where it was like, okay, get me this piece of information, because when I know that, then I'm going to be able to advise you to do, and like, how did that actually work? Because to skip to the chase for people, you guys end up being very successful, end up helping to define a totally new way of doing espionage that's still being used. So obviously we learn something in these interactions. So as I know it'll be abstracted, but as specific as you can be, something that you said, okay, I need this piece of information, and it became a very specific action.
Right. So an example from the book, which is a a person that we were pursuing through tech means. So we were listening in on conversations. So we never, by the end of the book, we had met that person, but at gathering the information, we were having all these conversations. And so, but we couldn't figure out what they were talking about exactly until another source brought us a piece of information about medication that the person had been acquiring under the table.
The target's code name is Zephram. From the book. And just like Jihi's saying, Zephram was a priority target that we couldn't get close to. We couldn't physically get close to him because he had protected his pattern of life. So he had drivers to take him from point to point. He knew how to protect his information, so we never knew when to expect him to go from point A to point B. He would leave for work at a different time in a different car with a different driver on a different day. So there was all this...
Because he knew he was a target.
He knew he was a target, so he protected himself. And just like Jihi's saying, it took multiple different types of information, tech information, interpretative information, surveillance information, before we put it all together. And even then, the kind of coup d'etat was another asset who didn't even know we were looking at Zephram, who gave us information about the person who was codenamed Zephram. And that made it all click.
Yeah. And then suddenly we knew that he was, at first we thought, well, maybe he's a drug addict and that's a vulnerability. And then we learned later on that, oh no, his child's sick, which is unfortunate, but also a huge vulnerability. So that really connected a lot of really important dots for us, so that one day when we did meet him, we had this piece of information in the back of our minds that we could work towards helping him with.
How do you not play that card too fast?
So that's really the beauty of what a case officer does. The case officers, they are trained to build these relationships in a way where over time they create a genuine friendship, they create genuine trust, so that when they uncover...
Are you using the word genuine the way that I think about it?
Yeah.
Like it's a real relationship.
Correct.
A real relationship.
Do you have to do that as a way to I don't have to remember what lie I told, basically. I'm just actually going to build a friendship with this person?
Yes and no. I would say that, first of all, it's kind of a uniquely American, quasi-uniquely Western strategy, the genuine relationship piece. And part of that is because Americans, we culturally like to have real friends. We don't culturally like to have a bunch of fake relationships. It's very exhausting to have fake relationships. Yes. So we try to build real relationships. But we build those real relationships inside the confines of our cover persona.
How the fuck does this not get blurry?
It does get blurry, and that's a big part of why there's so much mental health support, psychological support. That's also why assignments last as long as they do.
Have you guys been studied? There's got to be something here about the integrity of self-identification that as it begins to break down, this is problematic. And so what are they helping you do?
CIA has an entire office of medical services, OMS. And inside OMS, not only are there nurses and doctors for your physical body, but also for your mental health. And everything about us is recorded and documented and retained by OMS.
What do you have to be most worried about? What's the most common mental injury?
I guess it would be a full, a mental break, mental...
Because you're losing sight of who you really are?
And everything collapses around you.
What does that mean?
Your personal relationships with your family, your marriage, your relationship with your children, your sense of personal values, all of those things start to crumble when you've lived so many different roles, or when you've done things that violate your values and beliefs as an individual in pursuit of a larger mission. And then you look back at that through age. It's a difficult thing. You sacrifice more and more.
So at the time, maybe it didn't bother you.
Correct.
Right.
But it's an exponential sacrifice.
Oof. You just gave me the chills. Okay, so you talk about in the book, the moral gray is a thing that has to be dealt with in real time. We got to figure this out. Given that you guys get married reasonably early on in your journey together, how do you deal with that? Is Alex Hernandez married? And so it's easy for you to stay true to that? Or are you sitting there literally advising him on how to get close to women, and using flirtation might actually be one of the tools? And so you guys, as a married couple, are all right, this is how you cozy up to this lady. Are we there? Or are we just saying it's icky to use a guy's kid being sick as a way to get information?
So, there's so many areas where you can be working in the gray. And one of those is, I mean, we are trained in and well aware of honeypots, where sex is used, to basically either blackmail somebody for information, or sex is used to, develop that sexual relationship and then get information out of them. And Andy likes women quite a bit. So we always had the conversation where I was like, outside of our marriage, just for the mission, like, just be careful. Be careful not to get trapped by a beautiful woman, because it's stressful out there. You're by yourself. You're under a lot of stress. Maybe you have a really bad day, and some beautiful woman comes and offers you a massage, and then maybe the massage starts to become more, and you're like in a vulnerable position. And so we're well aware of our own vulnerabilities, because our job was to tap into other people's vulnerabilities.
That's wild.
Yeah, the Alex Hernandez alias was built like all professional aliases, which is not that far from truth, right? We talk about having whatever is your truth is kind of like your due north. And then you want a good alias to be about 10 degrees off of truth. So Alex Hernandez wasn't married, but he was engaged. And Alex Hernandez is a name that looks like a brown guy with black hair, whatever else it might be, right? So there's a lot of elements of truth. Alex Hernandez studied the same thing I studied, but from a different school. And Alex Hernandez was only 5 years older or younger than me in real life. And we could make all of the documentation align with the physical person, because that's how true undercover operations are executed. So Jihi didn't have to worry about me being too different than my real self, but I also didn't have to worry about me being too different from my real self. I could still be a Star Trek nerd. I could still, have traveled throughout the Far East. I could still have familiarity with Japanese language and Thai language without being too weird. Like, I had all these elements that were still very much me, even though they were under this other person.
Okay, so going back to the gray area, as a married couple, how do you guys deal with that? Is it that by nature you're just like not jealous, or is it that, okay, I'll take that as a misread on my part. So if you're having to draw too stark of a line, is it just, okay, let's just say that you're like, yo, like, sex, obviously, you don't have to worry about the Kestrel government or the Falcon government. You got to worry about me. So like clear, but like, I don't even want you to like be alone in a car with a woman. Like, do you then just have to adopt that in the persona of Alex Hernandez? And so it just becomes easy from that perspective?
To a certain extent, yes. Jihi is a very jealous person, but she's also very specifically jealous.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's very specifically jealous of skinny bitches.
I love it.
So if I had to like flirt with a fat chick, she was not
No
absurd.
worries.
If I had to flirt with a tranny, she was not concerned. If anything, she kind of cheered me on for all those missions where I had to go like,
I respect the hustle.
I had to go,
America thanks you.
pander to some dude's weird sexual obsession with whatever, dominatrixes or something else. She's like, go have fun, take pictures, tell me about it when you come back,
Right.
because that's not
Great
something we're ever going to do together.
Okay, respect.
Yeah, and I think when you're working in the gray and you're setting kind of like lines in this, writing lines in the sand for your partner, they still have to be fairly generalized. And so the way
And they're still in sand.
Right. And
right.
the way our marriage works is that I trust Andy more than I trust anybody else. I keep saying I trust Andy 100%, and then everybody's like, you definitely don't trust him 100%, which is probably true. But I trust him more than I trust anybody else.
Right.
And
Even though he's a former CIA spy.
yes. And
That doesn't enter your thinking, or you're like, listen, I know what that's like from the
Yeah.
inside. You guys get a headline, you think one thing, but when you're in it, it's like,
So there's what I really trust is two things. I trust him to make the best decision in the moment that he can. That's the first thing. The second thing is I trust him to tell me what's happened. So if the best decision in the moment is, babe, I was going to get the keys to the kingdom and all I had to do was go down on this beautiful woman, I'd be like, okay, because you told me, right? It's for the mission and you told me.
sorry, where do you sign up for this?
Exactly.
Just out of
I never got
curiosity.
that medal. I never got that medal.
Yeah, that never actually happened. But but I mean, when I say trust, that's what I mean. I trust him to make the best decision at the time that he can, and I trust him to always tell me. So there is no 10 years later being, remember on that mission? Well,
Right.
you know, this thing happened, and I'm sorry to tell you. Like, no.
Jihi also-
you come home and you tell me.
She also trusts her own ability to set all the traps in place to catch you. But she's not going to volunteer that.
Right.
So there's traps all over our house. There's traps all over my computer. There's traps all over my phone.
That's
like,
why I trust
know.
you to tell me.
She's
You already know. I'm going to know.
I know that I'm being verified a lot.
That is amazing. Okay, I want to go back to something very distressing. So honeypots. We're recording this in the middle of the Epstein scandal is just still going. And the thing that freaks me out is it always seems to be about young girls. Is it just known in the CIA that, first of all, men are easy to trap? I assume, I make the base assumption, please tell me in the listening audience if this isn't true, that it's like a honeypot is basically 98% for men. And that you're probably not going to trap women with sex, maybe relations, but not sex.
Yeah.
And is it true that some distressing percentage of men are going to be trapped, like with a very unnervingly young woman?
So I think men. I think it's a disproportionate amount of men.
Yes.
And I think part of that is historically they have been the breadwinners and in the high stress positions, and it's just when people are under stress, they are vulnerable. And what do you want when you're under a lot of stress as a man? You want somebody to make you feel good, to take care of you.
It's a 60-40 split among men between homosexual and heterosexual.
What?
Yeah. So
What?
So the vast majority
Whoa. 60-40? What is happening right now?
the majority of honeypot operations are targeting men with homosexual activity. Because that is the vulnerability.
Okay,
Vulnerability.
I'm reading this in some way that maybe I shouldn't. I'm hearing that out of 100 men, 60 are straight and 40 are gay.
No. What I'm saying is out of 100 honeypot operations against men,
Okay. So basically,
60% are
of the guys
men.
that are ultra sexually motivated and are
Yes.
going to be easy to trap,
Yes.
40% are gay.
Other way around.
But 60% are gay?
Yes. 60% are being targeted by sexual activity
So
from
gay-
another man.
Gay men are easier to trap than straight men.
And they're
With
not-
sex.
and
with
they're not
sex.
necessarily
Interesting.
gay.
What do you
Right.
mean? What?
Well, there's a spectrum.
Okay.
There's a sexual spectrum, right?
This is so interesting.
So
Say more words.
Heterosexual on one end, homosexual on one end.
And a lot of space in between.
But most of us,
Okay.
I would say, fall probably somewhere in between.
Interesting. Color in the space in between. What does that look like for you two as CIA spies? It's so cool. You guys are former CIA spies that are married. This is utterly fascinating. Okay, so walk me through the gray area.
So you would have an operation, or it's rare that the U.S. engages in sexual exploitation operations
Correct.
because it's just
I feel like I'm being spun right now.
it's too sticky.
Really?
It's too expensive.
Yeah.
It's too high risk.
We actually do follow laws. We have a
Yeah.
giant office of attorneys that we have to run operations through.
Really?
Now those
very-
attorneys have layers, and
So wait.
there's always a way around something, but
Okay.
But the first
so
level has to be legal.
There's a huge percentage of humanity that believes that Epstein was an intelligence agent. That most people just go asset. Sorry. Most people immediately go to Mossad. Some go to CIA. Some are like, who knows? But are you saying that the U.S. would not do honeypots involving children?
yes.
Oh, yes.
That's the most exact. That is exactly what we're saying.
Yeah.
If that were to have,
like that.
if that were to
If
have
I can
made it,
believe that.
yeah, if that were to have made it through where some U.S. signature from an attorney said we condone this operation, you're talking about a fraction of a percent of all operations. It's never been even remotely feasible in our mind that Epstein was a secured U.S. asset participating in honey trap operations with children. Not for the
Not
U.S.
for the U.S.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you guys assume it's France? No? I got beef with the French right now.
I've always had beef with the French, so I get it.
Okay.
But Mossad makes sense.
Yeah.
So do a lot of the.
Because Mossad just unhinged,
They just
no
do
matter
whatever
what.
they
Well,
want.
it's because their calculus is defense of the Jewish state. That is their.
And they're like, there's no laws.
There's nothing that is worth risking the loss of the Jewish state. So everybody else is disposable.
Yo, that's direct. I like it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Spade a spade. Okay, so back to the gray area. When we're thinking about honeypots, just to get everybody back, when we're thinking about honeypots, mostly men, 60-40, it's men that you're targeting with men, but we hesitate to say that they're gay men.
Right.
But why? So if they're in the gray, why does 60% of the time we're like, this will be easier with a guy?
It's not that the 60% of the time it's easier. It's that when we do the dossier work, what we find is that the vulnerability is tied in some way to a desire for sexual activity with another man.
Because they're hiding it.
Yeah.
They could be
So
hiding
it's
it.
just a little more illicit.
It could be a curiosity.
So if we can get them to do it here, then
Yes.
it's like, I can use it against them.
Bingo.
In a way, I wouldn't be able to use a woman against them.
Everything about espionage is about getting people
Wow.
to take actions that they're trying to hide. Because if they do an action that they're trying to hide and they hide it well, guess what that means? It means when you tell them to do a dead drop 2 years from now, or when you tell them to fly under a fake alias 2 years from now, they'll do it better because they're naturally good at keeping secrets. Whereas if somebody has sex with a prostitute who's a male and then runs home and calls their preacher and talks to their wife and calls their mom, you're like, this person is never going to be equipped to carry real secrets in the future.
Okay, so if I am recruiting for the CIA, am I preferentially going after people that are in the gray, that are not necessarily straight or gay, but a little more flexible? Like, is that valuable? Do you get bonus points for that?
I wouldn't say they're bonus points, but the gray is what you're looking for.
Because I'm assuming, like, if I'm stepping into a honeypot and maybe I'm just too suspicious, but if I'm stepping into a honeypot and somebody's like, do a bump of cocaine, I'm like, you first, right? If somebody's taking me and there's like a guy involved, I'd be like, you jerk him off first. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I'm not going to do anything that's going to be used against, I need to see you do some shit. Like, but if that guy's like, I can't either, then like clearly it feels like it would dead end there.
So you're very right, and that's where the pre-work comes in. You don't meet somebody the first time and then take them to a location where you do a bump of cocaine. You meet someone 5, 7, 12 times, and then over the course of that, you explore what's the right setting, what's the right time, what's the right compromise to introduce to them first. And then it's like a dominoes set after that. If you get them to do a small compromise, and then another one after that, another one after that, they just start to build momentum. And here's the thing. You have probably had a friend in your life who kept all your secrets for you. And you knew if you had a bad idea, that was the friend you were going to talk to first. We all have a friend like that. CIA's job is to train us to be that friend for foreigners.
Wild. Okay. Shadow cell. It's very dangerous. Reading the book, you're like, yo. Like there was a time where certainly when you went to Kestrel, you had to be having a stroke at home. Walk me through that moment from your perspective. Is it, you know what he's going to do? Do you guys know at the time, this is going to be way more dangerous than normal? Or because you end up getting picked up, interrogated, scary. But when you're at home, are you like, I don't realize this is the one that escalated to that?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So you're like that every mission. You're like, God, I hope he's
every
okay.
mission. Yes, every mission is. I hope it goes well, because once he's on the ground, I don't hear from him either. I mean, usually he'll only because he has to keep his cover. So it's not like he can call me and we can catch up on the day. So every single mission, I am like, please God, let him be okay and come home. So that particular mission that went badly, he called me. And that was the first time I was like, he called me just to be like, I'm coming home early, which sounds very innocuous. But for me, I was like, holy shit.
Because that's code.
Yeah, I was like, this is bad. And then the rest of the time between that and him coming home, I was just a wreck because I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew something bad was going on and I wouldn't know. So we had our own commo plan, our communication plan, our own personal communication plan, where I knew that he would give me signs of life. And we still do this to, give me a sign of life every several hours.
Wow.
So I knew that was in place and that was enough for me to kind of hold off because there's nothing you can do in the meantime. So I just worked a lot. And Andy and I talk about this as well. I mean, I loved being a professional. I loved being an intelligence professional. So I just threw myself into work, which, you know, really benefits the CIA.
What is it about the game that you like?
I personally love knowing things that other people don't know. I love secrets. I felt like I was really good at targeting. I love detective novels and puzzles, and to me, that's what that work felt like, and it was that work with secrets. And then the other thing was the people. We worked with really, really amazing people in the agency, and I've never worked with another group of people like that.
It's incredible. Okay, so walk me through what it's like to be pulled off the street, interrogated. How is your heart not beating out of your chest?
It is. It's a terrifying feeling.
And do they just expect you to be scared? Because it's like, well, whether this guy's guilty or not, he's going to be freaked out. This is weird.
There's a recipe for a really good interrogation. And we learn the recipe when we're at the agency because we're supposed to use it against our targets.
So you know what's coming.
Correct. So what ends up happening in my case in Shadow Cell, is because they have a different recipe, right? Kestrel follows a different recipe when I'm in Falcon than what we follow here in the United States. So right away, when I see the disparity between what we do and what they do, I'm starting to understand that they're losing advantages that they could have. As an example, it's very common.
Because they're doing it worse.
They're doing it differently, but they're doing it wrong, in my opinion, right?
So inside you're like, bitch, please.
Kind of. For real, though. For real, because there's an element, as a basic example. When you snatch somebody off the street, you need to assume where they're physiologically going to be. Heart racing, body temperature increasing, sweats, right? Their perspiration is going up. They're burning calories. Their glucose is dropping. You got all these things that you can assume right away. Well, what's the best way to maximize the impact? It's to then put them in a room and leave them alone for a long period of time. Let that adrenaline dump happen. Let the sweat turn into cold on their skin. Let them get nervous. Observe them the whole time. Change the temperature in the room. There's all sorts of shit you can do before you ever say a word. That's not what they did. So right away, I was seeing the difference between what they were doing and what we were trained to do, which gave me confidence that I could fall back on my training to resist or counter the interrogation. So control my breathing, control my energy burn, regain my mental clarity, and then before I knew it, the interrogation was starting. And then as the interrogation progressed, I could even see in their questioning, in their relationship with the two interrogators, you could see these gaps. Every time you see a gap in an interrogation, it really is like a scoreboard in a soccer game where it's like a point for me, not for them. A point for me, not for them. And that's really how you survive any kind of long, extended captivity, is you're constantly keeping score. Where did I win? Where did they win? And who's winning the game overall?
Okay, how long were you interrogated for?
It was about 2.5 hours.
Wow. Okay, and they just suspected that you were spying, like you were doing suspicious behavior. Like, what was it that triggered them?
We actually don't know. We've done all of our counterintelligence reviews with the agency and within our own cell. We suspect that what happened is that my identity document was flagged. And then because of when my flagged document tried to cross a border, they pulled in whatever team was available at the moment. Part of that was our intention. We're taught that when you try to escape across a border, you want to do it at a time that's a low period so that the best players in the game aren't on the field, right? So you try to get in early, you try to get out late, but you don't try to do something at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I was trying to evac early, and I got the B team or possibly the D team that was available on site to interrogate me. And then it worked out for the best. So the theory behind the process of tradecraft worked in our case.
Okay. Whew, I mean, this has got to be very stressful. It ends up for you guys being the punchline. Okay, we're going to tap out. What was it, Jihi, that made you want to eject? Okay, we've done our time, we've served the country, and now we're done.
Andy wanted to leave.
Would you have stayed?
I would have stayed.
She'd still be
Now,
there.
why didn't you stay? So he's more at physical risk.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you didn't say, hey, cool, totally get it, go do your thing, I'm going to stay here?
So for me, it really came down, when I'm making a big decision, I make this pros and cons list. And it really just came down to, we had a baby, And we wanted another one. And we were, by that time, working in DC again. And I just saw, Andy was making more than I was at the time. And DC is an expensive place to live. So daycare was really expensive. And I thought, if we have a second one of us will have to stay home. We can't, on our government salaries, afford 2 in daycare. So not only would one of us have to stay home, but we'd have to move further away than we were from the agency. We used to live a 20-minute commute. And so we'd have to move an hour out. One of us wouldn't be working. Most likely it would be me because Andy had a higher salary and I was the one who wanted to work.
Yeah.
So,
very pedestrian reasons, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it comes down to. CIA officers are still just everyday people.
Right.
Yeah. And so Andy said, let's move, to Florida and be by your parents and they can help us with the kids. And I was like, after a lot of convincing, I was like, all right. I was like, I moved away from home. Like, I have made it. Yeah. This is exactly where I should be right now. But he convinced me in the end that it would be best for our family. And that's what really matters the most to us.
All right. Parents are about threat detection. It's one of the core parts of the job. You guys have a very unique insight into the level of risk that we are at as a nation. As a mom, how do you parse through all of that, knowing what you know? Do you want to feed your kids the narrative so that they feel comfortable? Or do you want them to be like, hey, listen, all these other kids think the world is one thing, but it's not that. It's
and
this.
Are you going to filter your answer right now? That's what I'm going to be paying attention to.
Let's go, man.
I like to filter. So far, our kids are 12 and 8. And up until this year, I felt like they were just too young to really understand. But now that my son's 12, I'm starting to talk to him more about what's on the news. And I'm starting to find ways to talk to my daughter. My daughter, she's very girly and she likes makeup and she wears these very fashionable clothes. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, like you are in danger. Like you could be molested by somebody. Like there's so many things in your future that I have to protect you from. So I am now starting to, I think they're developmentally ready for me to start introducing the dangers of the world because I think we have to. I don't want my kids to feel that the world is a dangerous place, but I also feel like it's my job to protect them.
I think we also don't want them to feel like the world is a safe place.
Yeah.
The world is just the world. It's a place. It's got dangerous people. It's got helpful people. But people are just people. And the only person, the place where it all starts, where your defense really starts, is with yourself. We've been teaching our son self-rescue since he was probably 6 or 7 years old.
What's self-rescue?
You are your own first line of rescue. So we will compliment him sometimes and say, hey, good job self-rescuing, right? Whether that's falling off the edge of a pool into the water with your shoes and clothes on, whether that's not going down a dirt path that has snakes in it or something. Like when they make a good decision that enhances their personal safety, we will call that a good job at self-rescue. When they identify that they're out of their own water, like their water bottle's empty, that sort of thing that shows that their awareness for their own self-preservation, that's what we're trying to encourage.
What do you tell them about the gray?
Our daughter lives in the gray already. She's naturally predisposed.
You guys are like, that's our kid.
We're very proud of it, and it's also hugely inconvenient.
Yeah, our son is very black and white. He is very uncomfortable with gray areas. He is very uncomfortable with untruths. And so I think he requires more work to understand that you can't necessarily live black and white. You can't always be the one telling the truth because sometimes you need to refrain. And then our daughter, I think, has just like Andy said, I think our daughter has it down already. She knows.
She got an intuitive understanding for that one.
She does.
That's very interesting. Okay, I would clock that as women use a different strategy in life. They don't approach things front on. So woman, the likelihood that she gets into a fist fight is very low, but the likelihood that she uses a reputational form of violence is very high. Do you guys clock it that way? That didn't seem to line up earlier. That's why I was asking about targeting, if that was more a female-centric thing, which doesn't seem to be. But does that read seem, given that you psychologically profile people, does that seem to fit or no?
I'm curious what your answer is here, because for me, it's not broken down on gender lines. It's broken down on personality, and it's broken down on like natural energetic tendencies, what they can and can't read about another person, what they do and do not like to do themselves. Like everybody has the capacity to manipulate, but how do they manipulate? Even our son, who's very black and white, will manipulate with feelings. He'll come up when he wants something really badly. He'll come up and just assume he can't get it, and he'll demonstrate sadness, and he'll be like, "I know you're going to say no, but I'm just wondering if." And that is a manipulative approach.
Yeah.
He may not see it that way himself as a 12-year-old. He may see it as just sharing his
Expressing
true
how I feel.
feelings.
Yeah.
But because he's sharing his feelings before the actual decision, it is manipulative.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your answer is. I don't see it as a gender thing at all.
Yeah, I'm very careful not to split things by gender unless it's something that's culturally affected. So cultural gender roles, I think those are very valid in the way that people behave. But I think things like are they straightforward, or are they come at you from the side? I don't see that as gender-based.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do see that as personality-based, energy-based. There are so many other factors that go into the way a person is than gender. Although I do think that I think that the cultural manipulations of how genders are supposed to be, you can look at that, but it's not the whole picture.
You even talk about biology, values, and
Yes.
beliefs, right? The biology element is legit. I don't think that the penis or vagina is the biology that matters as much as the beliefs about what it means that you have a penis or a vagina. Those beliefs kind of dictate how you carry out your behaviors and how others interpret your behaviors more so than the biology itself.
Interesting. I have a hypothesis that algorithms know with more than 90% accuracy whether somebody's male or female, literally just by what they linger on, what they like. Do you guys think that's crazy?
I don't think that's crazy.
I don't think that's crazy.
So we are leaking our gender in some way.
Our gender
Yes.
identity, at
Our
least.
gender identity.
Interesting. What do you think is a stronger driver? The biology, or I guess you've already answered this, the biology or the sense of identity? I would say biology 1,000 times.
I would say identity more than biology.
Yeah. I
Because
would too.
what's interesting is in our experience, when you're targeting a source of information, you literally can't approach the same person the same way if time has passed. Because the 22-year-old person is very different when they're 42. Their biology is only aged. Otherwise, it's still the same. Same genetic code, maybe they have more constipation, who knows? But they haven't changed genetically, biologically, very much. But everything else about values, beliefs, perspectives, opinions, all of that has been changed over 20 years of history and experience. So you have to adapt to how you approach them. That's a core element in espionage, is understanding that whoever you meet today, if you meet someone today who doesn't have access to any secrets, but is very good at keeping a secret, 30 years from now, that person might be CEO of a government contracted company, and you already know they can keep a secret. So now they have access they didn't have when they were 20, and you know that they're good at keeping secrets. So now all of a sudden they're infinitely more valuable, but you can't approach them the same way 30 years later. You have to approach them differently. They might have known you when they were 22, but now that they're 52, they have different motivational levers that you can pull on.
Right. Do you guys think that being spies has influenced how you engage with each other as husband and wife?
Oh,
Absolutely.
How?
I don't lie to her because
She's too good at detecting?
She's just too good at seeing it. She's too good at seeing it. If she sees it, I won't know that she saw it, right? So she's going to have leverage over me. So it's way better to tell her the truth, because then she has to react to the truth. And I know CIA has taught me how to observe her, so I can see that she's slower at processing the truth. And that slower processing gives me more space to kind of win points back, if you will, for whatever I do wrong, whether it's yelling at the kids or not buying the right type of bread or whatever it might be in our everyday life. So there's all sorts of benefits there. Plus, we communicate about mundane things and high impact things with a whole different vocabulary. A vocabulary that we learned at the agency about everything from personality types to cognitive distortions to strategic elements and planning. When she talks about a combo plan, I know exactly what she means. I know exactly what steps would be involved. So when she says to me before I travel to Africa, well, what's the combo plan? I already know what she's talking about. It's a whole different language.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think the shared vocabulary is something that I think we have that possibly other couples don't have. And part of that shared vocabulary is just what we feel, I want to say comfortable, but what we are willing to talk about. So hard conversations, we know is a requirement. I think most couples avoid hard conversations, but we know we have to have them, and we have a vocabulary that we can use to get ourselves through those hard conversations. It doesn't mean that those look great. I mean, that might be 3 days of Andy getting no sex and me being really furious and, but at the end of it, we've made it through, right? And we have the vocabulary to close that out and move on and be better.
It doesn't mean we don't have misunderstandings. We're still a married couple. Just as a quick story, we were at the Grove in LA just a few days ago. Great place. And we had just purchased dessert for the kids. They had a good lunch. It was a big day, so we got them something sweet. One got ice cream, one got boba tea. Well, Jihi looks at me in the middle of the fucking Grove with these kids running around and all this chaos happening, and she's like, "Do you want anything sweet?" And of course I respond, "No, I'm fine." And then we leave 15 minutes later and she's angry. And I'm like, "Why are you angry?" She's like, "Well, I wanted something sweet." I was like, "I don't remember you asking for anything sweet." And she's like, "I said, do you want anything sweet?" And to me, I was like, you asked me if I wanted something sweet. And I said no because you're on a diet. Because you're always on a diet. Because
that's also, you got to compete with the skinny bitches. So I feel it.
So there's always miscommunication that still happens as married couples. The vocabulary doesn't replace the lack of communication, but at least we're able to talk about it where I'm like, "Why won't you say what you mean?" And then she can come back and she can just say, "I feel uncomfortable." That is a conversation that many married couples don't get to have.
Oh, they don't even know how to have it.
Yeah.
Lisa and I talk about that a lot. We try to talk in insecurities. So it's like, once you can do that, then it's like, oh, okay, cool. I get where we're at. Totally understand. But if you don't, and it just stays in that emotional place, it gets bad fast.
Yeah.
It's wild. You guys are fascinating individually. Together, though. This is dope. What can we expect from you guys in the future? Are we gonna write a spy novel, a thriller? Where are we headed?
So Shadow Cell hits bookshelves on September 9th.
Phenomenal. Get your copy.
Worldwide. We're very excited about that. It's already breaking records in audiobook sales before it's even published. We've got just a very happy publisher, very happy agent, very happy world so far. We've also already sold film rights to Legendary Pictures.
Let's go.
So
that's incredible.
After we talk to you, we're actually going to talk to a screenwriter.
Oh my God, that's
that we've
amazing.
been connected with. So we'll see whether or not it ever makes it to the big screen or the streaming screen or anything else. But we're super excited about that.
You should be.
We have a second book that's already with CIA for clearance that talks about how we used our common spy experiences and spy tradecraft to build a business. And that book will come out exactly a year after Shadow Cell comes out.
It's incredible.
And then on the far horizon, I just want to do more and more creating. What I've discovered in this process personally, and I'll let you speak to what you've discovered in the process, is two things. First, it's therapeutic to go back through what happened at CIA. And processing through that is a kind of self-reflection that is both empowering and humbling at the same time. And it's really powerful to look at where we are now as digital personalities, as business owners, as parents, as a married couple, and see where we started. It's incredible. It's very similar to, I was talking to Lisa earlier today, we were standing on your balcony, and you guys live overlooking where your first date was.
Yeah, it's wild.
So you can actually go back to where your first date was and look up at where you are now. It's an amazing thing to be able to see where you came from, but then also go back and stand in those shoes and see where you are.
Yeah.
So it's been really empowering and enriching for me to go through that process. But the other thing I learned is that nobody believes in you as much as you believe in yourself. And CIA told us that. We believed that then. But after coming and building a business and going through executives that tried to kill our business from just not knowing what they were doing to, people who say they believe in your story but then want to change your story, I'm realizing that creative control is a very important thing. So you'll see more creative elements, more creative content from us that we will control.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I come from a very creative family. So, and when I met Andy, he had gone from Air Force to federal government, and I just thought he was just an average guy. And now I'm finding out he's so creative, and he really is the happiest when he's creating. We have a very creative household. And so, you know, I'm hoping that Andy will do a lot more writing because he's just amazing at it. And he has all these amazing ideas that, you know, I get because we're in the same household, but I would love for him to be able to share them with everybody else as well.
What did you learn from the process of writing this book? Because you don't talk about that very often.
It's really hard to write a book. No, you know what? The book writing process was great. We did it together. It was a trip down memory lane. We got to remember all of our friends and these great experiences we had, which came at a really timely. It was really timely for me because I was really struggling in my personal life about like, what am I doing with myself? And so that was wonderful. Pushing it through CIA was so difficult. But I'm glad we went through it once, because if we ever have to do it again, now I know not to have so many fights with Andy.
We fought
and that
a
we
lot.
will get through it.
We fought a lot because CIA, what I wanted to create was the most comprehensive, compelling, and contemporary spy story ever published. And that was kind of the bar I set from the beginning. I was like, I don't want to write about missions 30 years old. I want to write about missions that are happening right now, tradecraft that's happening right now, and I want to share things that CIA has never publicly shared before, but that aren't considered quote unquote classified. We talk a lot about how the government shapes what information it shares. There's a lot of information it shapes that isn't classified. So I was like, let's tell some truth behind all the malinformation. So our book talks about a mole that CIA has never publicly disclosed until this book. They didn't want to do that. And Jihi, being the penultimate government employee, when CIA looked at our manuscript and said, this entire manuscript is now classified and it will never be published.
Whoa.
That's what they said to us. Jihi was like, well, we tried. And I was like, fuck that. Like we hit on a nerve, but we were so meticulous in how we wrote that manuscript. We knew nothing in that manuscript is going to give a foreign adversary an advantage. So I wanted to go head to head with CIA. She wanted to cower right away and not kick that hornet's nest. And for 2.5 years, we fought about that. We fought back and forth with every edit and every back and forth email with CIA. I mean, we scheduled meetings over in person. We scheduled meetings over the phone. And it was this just painful multi-year clearance process until Jihi was finally like, fuck it, I'm tired of fighting. And she went line by line through the whole manuscript and referenced every single thing to some sort of open source point.
Wow.
And then turned it into CIA, and they came back and they were like, thank you for your reference. It's still classified. And that was enough to trigger, that was waking the beast.
Yeah.
Because after that, they were done. And 6 months later, we had a cleared book because she threatened them with a First Amendment lawsuit.
Yeah,
Wow.
our general life involves Andy persevering and dragging me along. And then at the very end, once he's kind of like, you know, teetering on the edge there, I'll be like, what? We're going to do this.
It's kind of like every Dungeons and Dragons game you've ever played. You're dragging along the healer for what reason?
Yeah.
The final fucking battle. And then the healer pays dividends. Yeah.
Exactly.
That is amazing. All right. Where can people follow along with you guys?
You'll find us at everydayspy.com. You'll find Shadow Cell on bookshelves everywhere. If you want to find it online, you can go to shadowcellbook.com, and that will take you to Amazon, Goodreads, Walmart, every place where the book is being sold. You can also find us on social media at Everyday Spy, and of course our YouTube channel, Andrew Bustamante.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, everybody, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care. Peace. If you like this conversation, check out this episode to learn more.
America needs to do a better job selling America and expecting you to love America.
Yes.
Expecting you to be proud to be an American. Are we going to keep walking on eggshells and being afraid of this kind of stuff? You don't like being an American? Let me tell you how great Russia is.